After 6 years of silence, my estranged sister showed up begging for help, but her lies nearly ruined my life again. I, 29F, have been living separately from my family for the past 6 years. My family consists of my mother, 55F, and my older sister, Sarah, 32F. Sarah was always my mom's favorite child, and this caused a lot of tension between us growing up. 6 years ago, I was forced to leave our family home due to a series of conflicts with Sarah. She had always been controlling and manipulative, often using her position as the favorite to get her way. The final straw came when she accused me of stealing money from our mother's purse. I didn't do it, but Sarah convinced our mom that I was lying. The atmosphere at home became unbearable with constant arguments and distrust. Eventually, Sarah gave me an ultimatum. Either I confessed to the theft, which I didn't commit, or leave the house. I chose to leave as I couldn't bear the thought of admitting to something I didn't do. For the past 6 years, I've been living on my own, working hard to build a life for myself. I have a decent job as an accountant at a small firm, and I've managed to rent a small but comfortable apartment. I've had minimal contact with my family during this time. My mom occasionally calls to check in, but our conversations are usually short and superficial. I haven't spoken to Sarah at all since I left. Last week, on a rainy Tuesday evening, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, I was shocked to see Sarah standing there, soaking wet and crying. It had been so long since I'd seen her that, for a moment, I didn't even recognize her. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and a haunted look on her face. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated. The last time I'd seen Sarah, she had been yelling at me to get out of our family home. Now here she was, asking to come into mine. It felt surreal. After a moment, I stepped aside and let her in. Sarah stumbled into my apartment, leaving wet footprints on the floor. She collapsed onto my couch, still crying. I stood there awkwardly, not sure what to do. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but another part was still angry about the past. "What's going on, Sarah?" I finally asked. Between sobs, Sarah managed to explain that her husband had kicked her out. I was surprised to hear this. I knew she had gotten married about 3 years ago, but I hadn't been invited to the wedding and didn't know much about her husband. He's been abusive," Sarah choked out. "It's been getting worse and worse. Tonight, he just lost it. He threw me out and said if I came back, he'd kill me." I felt a mix of emotions hearing this. On one hand, I was horrified that Sarah had been going through this. No one deserves to be in an abusive relationship. On the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of anger. Where was this vulnerability and honesty 6 years ago when she was accusing me of theft? "Why didn't you go to mom's house?" I asked. Our mother's place was closer to where Sarah lived with her husband, and I knew mom would welcome Sarah with open arms. Sarah looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. I didn't want to worry her," she said. "She doesn't know about the abuse. I've been hiding it from her. I didn't want her to know I'd been kicked out." I felt conflicted. Part of me wanted to help Sarah, to be the bigger person and put our past behind us. But another part of me was screaming that this wasn't fair. Sarah had forced me out of our home, cut me off from our family, and now she expected me to take her in. "Sarah," I said slowly, "I don't know if I can help you. We haven't spoken in 6 years. You forced me to leave home, and now you show up here expecting what, exactly?" Sarah's face crumpled. "I know," she whispered. "I have no right to ask for your help, but I didn't know where else to go. I'm scared, and I'm alone. And I'm sorry for everything." I stood there, torn between my anger at the past and my concern for Sarah's current situation. I didn't know what to do. After much internal debate, I reluctantly agreed to let Sarah stay with me for a few days. She said she needed time to sort things out with a lawyer regarding her situation. I made it clear that this was temporary and that I wasn't getting involved in her personal matters. I continued with my normal routine, going to work and maintaining my own life. For 4 days, Sarah stayed in my spare room. We didn't talk much beyond necessary interactions. I could tell she wanted to discuss things more, but I kept my distance. The wounds from our past were still raw, and I wasn't ready to open up. On the fourth day after work, I was walking to my car in the office parking lot when a man approached me. He introduced himself as John, Sarah's husband. I was immediately on guard, remembering Sarah's claims of abuse. However, what John told me next left me reeling. According to John, Sarah wasn't the victim she claimed to be. He said that he had recently discovered Sarah was having an affair with his friend, Tom. Apparently, Tom had been coming to their house frequently, mostly when John wasn't home. John found out about this and confronted Sarah, which led to a huge argument. He admitted to yelling at her to leave, but denied any physical abuse. John went on to explain that Sarah had filed a domestic violence case against him. He seemed desperate as he told me that the only evidence that could prove his innocence was on a flash drive that Sarah had taken with her. This drive allegedly contained security camera footage from their home, showing Sarah with Tom and proving that John hadn't been abusive. I stood there, stunned. Part of me wanted to dismiss John's story outright. After all, isn't this what abusers do? Try to discredit their victims? But another part of me remembered the Sarah I grew up with. Manipulative, dishonest, always playing the victim when it suited her. John pleaded with me to help him. He asked if I could try to find the flash drive and, if necessary, testify in court about Sarah's past behavior and manipulative tendencies. He emphasized that he wasn't asking me to lie, just to share my experiences with Sarah if it came to that. I didn't give John an answer right away. I told him I needed time to think and process this information. He gave me his contact details and left looking defeated. Now I'm torn. On one hand, if John is telling the truth, then Sarah is once again manipulating people and potentially ruining an innocent man's life. On the other hand, if Sarah is telling the truth, then by helping John, I could be aiding an abuser and putting my sister in danger. I haven't confronted Sarah about this yet. Part of me wants to search for the flash drive while she's out, but I know that would be a huge violation of privacy. Another part wants to just ask her outright about John's claims, but I'm afraid of how she might react if she is lying. Update, thank you all for your advice on my last post. After much consideration, I decided to help John. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than Sarah was letting on. I started by unnoticeably searching for the flash drive when Sarah was out, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I began to wonder if John had been mistaken about its existence. Then, one afternoon, I caught a break. I was working from home and saw Sarah using a flash drive on her laptop. When she was done, she carefully hid it in her suitcase. A few minutes later, she left the apartment, saying she had some errands to run. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't resist. I retrieved the flash drive from her suitcase and plugged it into my computer. What I found confirmed John's story. There were several video clips from their home security cameras. They showed Sarah with Tom, John's friend, in compromising situations. There were also recordings of arguments between Sarah and John where she was clearly the aggressor, and John was trying to de-escalate the situation. I felt sick to my stomach. Sarah had lied again, and this time she was trying to ruin an innocent man's life. I quickly made a copy of the flash drive's contents and returned the original to Sarah's suitcase. The next day, I met with John and told him what I'd found. I agreed to testify if necessary, but hoped it wouldn't come to that. John was grateful and said he'd have his lawyer reach out if they needed my statement. The case went to court a few weeks later. John's lawyer presented the evidence from the flash drive, along with testimony from neighbors who had witnessed Sarah's behavior. I didn't end up needing to testify, as the evidence was overwhelming. The judge dismissed Sarah's claims of abuse and instead scolded her for filing false charges. I thought I'd feel relieved when the truth came out, but I was unprepared for what happened next. Sarah was furious with me. She showed up at my apartment, screaming that I had betrayed her and ruined her life. She said she'd never forgive me and that I was dead to her. What shocked me even more was my mother's reaction. She called me absolutely enraged. She criticized me for not supporting Sarah and for airing our family's dirty laundry in public. It became clear during our conversation that she had known about Sarah's affair and her plan to accuse John of abuse. She had been supporting Sarah's lies all along. I was devastated. I had always known my mother favored Sarah, but I never thought she'd go this far. It made me question every interaction I'd had with them over the years. In the aftermath, I've cut ties with both Sarah and my mother. It's been painful, but I know it's for the best. I can't have people in my life who would lie so easily and try to destroy someone else's life to cover up their own mistakes. John reached out to thank me again. He's doing okay, all things considered. He's filed for divorce and is working on rebuilding his life. As for me, I'm trying to process everything that's happened. I know I did the right thing by exposing the truth, but it's come at a great personal cost. I've lost what little family I had left, but I've also gained something valuable. The knowledge that I can trust my own judgment and stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I'll face it with a clear conscience. Thank you all for your support throughout this ordeal. It's meant more to me than you can know.